In this episode, we're going to take everything from this entire series of What the Winners Got Right and turn it into something you can use in your supplement business. So today I am going to give you a diagnostic, a way to look at your own marketing and figure out which of the 4 supplement buying forces you are weakest on. Because a missing force is almost always the reason conversion rate is stuck. This is the final part of the mini-series called What the Winners Got Right. Over the last 5 episodes, we looked at desire, hope, trust, and belief. Each one through the lens of a brand that mastered it. If you haven't listened to those episodes, you might want to go back and give them a listen. This episode will still be useful, but you will get a lot more out of it if you go back and listen to the others first. Okay, let's get to it. Welcome to Health Business Mastery, the Creative Thirst podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Hewitt. Let me start by pulling the whole series together into a single idea, because there is one thing every brand we looked at had in common, and it is the foundation for everything. Every one of these brands led with one force and pointed everything at it. Ollie, Smarty Pants, and Goli led with desire, specifically by removing the thing that was killing desire that already existed. A G1 led with belief, reframing what a healthy routine should look like. Grunes led with hope, by turning the format into a mechanism that gave the buyer hope they could actually stick with it. And IM8 led with trust, building a depth of scientific credibility that matched a sophisticated buyer. Now here is the part that matters. None of these brands only used one force. A G1 had hope and trust and desire all working too. IM8 had desire and hope underneath the trust. But each brand had a lead force, a primary lever, and then they aligned the other 3 forces to reinforce that lead. Everything pointed in the same direction. That is the thing most struggling supplement brands get wrong. It's not that they are missing all 4 forces. It is that their forces are scattered. The ad pulls on desire. The landing page leads with trust badges. The email sequence tries to build hope, and none of them are reinforcing a single clear lead. The buyer feels the lack of coherence, even if they cannot name it. The marketing feels like every other supplement because it is pulling in 4 directions at once instead of driving one force home and supporting it with the rest. So the first principle of the diagnostic is this. You are not looking for a brand that has all 4 forces equally. You're looking for a clear lead force with the other 3 aligned behind it. Before we run the diagnostic, let me give you a fast refresher on the 4 forces, because you are going to need a clear picture of each one to do this work. Desire is the first pushing force. It is rooted in the problem or situation the buyer wants to move away from. The key thing I taught in the desire episode is that you almost never have to create desire. It is already there. Your job is to find what is suppressing it and remove that thing. Hope is the second pushing force. It is the energy that turns desire into action. Desire by itself is weak. Hope is what propels it. And the mechanism of hope is the part of your story that gives the buyer a logical reason to believe it will work this time. By acknowledging why it failed before and introducing the missing piece. Trust is the force that acts as both a push and a pull. It pushes when you align with the buyer against a common enemy. It pulls when credibility reduces their anxiety enough to move forward. And the thing I stressed in the trust episode is that real trust is built into the substance of your story, not bolted on as badges that everyone else also has. And belief is the other push and pull force. It carries the most emotional energy because people protect what they believe, especially about themselves. You cannot change a deep core belief, but you can find a belief the buyer already holds. and reframe the path to satisfying it, the way AG1 did. The two pushing forces, desire and hope, are on the emotional side. The other two forces that push and pull are trust and belief. They are on the functional side of the buyer's mind. All four are operating in the buyer at the same time, because the supplement buyer is always dual-minded. The functional mind and the emotional mind are both evaluating at once. Okay, now let's get into the actual diagnostic. I'm going to give you a set of questions for each force. As I go through them, I want you to honestly score your own marketing on each one, not where you wish it was, where it actually is when a cold prospect lands on your page today. Start with desire. Look at your main sales page in your top ad. Ask yourself, do I know the specific reason my buyer's desire has been suppressed? Have they tried things before and failed? Do they have category fatigue? Is there identity friction where they do not see themselves as a supplements person? And then, does my marketing actually address that specific desire killer? Or am I just describing my product's benefits and assuming the desire will take care of itself? If you are only describing benefits and not removing a desire killer, desire is a weak point for you. Now let's look at hope. Look at the same assets, the page, the ads, and ask, where exactly do I give the buyer a reason to believe this will work for them this time? Do I acknowledge that they have probably tried other things that failed? Do I take the blame off them and put it on the previous solutions that did not address the real cause? And do I introduce a clear missing piece, a mechanism that explains why this is different? If your marketing jumps straight from the problem to your product without ever building that bridge of hope, hope is a weak point. And remember, this is the single most common gap I see. Most supplement marketing has almost no hope construction in it at all. It assumes the buyer is hopeful, but the truth is they aren't. They're skeptical and a little defeated. Now let's look at trust. Ask, what is my trust actually built on? If the honest answer is a row of badges and some star ratings that look exactly like every competitor, your trust is shallow. Then ask, is the level of my proof matched to how sophisticated my buyer is? A sophisticated buyer needs depth and substance. A mainstream buyer needs simple, fast trust signals and does not want a science lecture. If you are pitching at the wrong level for your buyer's sophistication, or if your trust is all bolted on badges with no substance underneath, trust is a weak point. And now let's look at belief. Ask, what does my buyer already believe about my category before they ever meet my brand? And is my marketing fighting that belief or working with it? If you are trying to convince them that everything they believe is wrong, you are pushing against a force you cannot win against, and belief is working against you. If you have found a belief they already hold, and you are reframing the path toward your product as the natural way to honor that belief, belief is working for you. Go through all four honestly, and you will almost always find that one of them is clearly the weakest. That weakest force is your highest leverage fix. Now, the diagnostic I just gave you is based on judgment, on reading your own marketing, honestly, but you can also let your data point you to the weak force, and this is where it gets really useful, because the data does not lie the way our opinions about our own marketing do. If your problem is that cold traffic does not convert, that people land and bounce without engaging, that usually points to a desire or belief problem at the top. The desire killer is intact, or the buyer's existing belief is filtering you out before you ever get a chance to make your case. They are gone before hope or trust ever come into play. If your problem is that people engage, they read, they spend time, they get to the cart, and then they do not buy, that usually points to a hope or trust problem. The desire was strong enough to pull them in, But somewhere in the middle, they either did not come to believe it would work for them, which is hope, or they did not get over their suspicion, which is trust. The buyer who abandons late in the funnel is usually a buyer whose hope or trust did not get built high enough to overcome the final hesitation. If your problem is that people buy once and then churn fast, that they do not resubscribe and they do not reorder, that is almost always a hope problem that the product experience failed to sustain. They had enough hope to try it. The experience did not keep the hope alive long enough for them to see results or build the habit. This is the Grun's lesson in reverse. Grun's won on retention by building hope into the format. If your retention is bleeding, look at where the hope dies in the actual usage of your product. And if your problem is that you can acquire customers, but only at a cost to acquire a customer that does not leave any margin, that is often a sign that you are leaning entirely on paid traffic to brute force desire, while one of the other forces is weak. When trust or belief or hope is missing, you can still buy your way to sales. But you pay a premium for every single one because the marketing is doing none of the persuasive work on its own. Strengthen the weak force, and your cost to acquire a customer tends to come down because the marketing starts converting people that paid pressure alone could not. So you can run this two ways. From the inside, by reading your marketing against the four forces honestly, and from the outside, by letting the pattern in your data tell you where buyers are falling out and mapping that fallout to the force that governs that stage. Do both, and they will usually agree. And that agreement is your answer. Now, if you're running a brand between 500,000 and 20 million a year, the big brands in this series had advantages you don't have. Funding, a celebrity status, a decade of brand equity, and the biggest one, the ability to absorb mistakes. But here's what they also had. Scale that hides weakness. When you are spending tens of millions on marketing, you can have a weak force and gloss over it with sheer volume and reach. You can afford an inefficient funnel because the top of it is so enormous. A brand owned by Unilever has committees and brand guidelines and a year of lead time to change a positioning. You can rewrite your sales page this month. You can rebuild your hope construction in your email sequence by the end of the month. The whole reason understanding the forces is so valuable at your size is that you can actually act on the insight fast, and the impact lands on a business small enough to feel it. So don't leave this series thinking it's a story about brands you could never be. Hear it as a set of levers that the biggest companies in the category paid enormous sums to pull, handed to you in a form you can apply to your own marketing on a business nimble enough to benefit from it. So here's how to do it. First, run the diagnostic I said above. Read your main sales page and your top ad against the four forces and pull the pattern from your data on where buyers fall out. Identify your single weakest force. Resist the urge to fix everything at once because if you try to strengthen all four, at least not yet, you want to avoid ending up with the same scattered mess. Second, decide on your lead force. Sometimes your weakest force is also the one that should lead, and fixing it transforms everything. Other times you already have a natural lead force that is strong, and the weak force is simply failing to support it. Either way, get clear on what your one lead force is, and make sure it is unmistakable in your marketing. Third, align the other three behind the lead. Once your lead force is clear, every other element should reinforce it rather than pulling in its own direction. Your trust elements should support your lead. Your hope construction should support your lead. The whole page should feel like it is driving one idea home. The way AG1 drove the one thing handled idea, or Grun's drove the you can actually stick with this idea. And fourth, test it against the real buyer. not against your own taste. Put it in front of cold traffic and watch what the data does. The forces are a framework for forming a strong hypothesis, but the buyer is the one who confirms it. Read the new data, find the next weakest force, and run the loop again. This is not a one-time fix. It is a way of thinking about your marketing that you come back to every time the numbers plateau. That's the whole system. Diagnose the weak force, pick the lead force, align the rest behind it, test against the real buyer, then repeat. It's simple but difficult, and almost nobody in this industry does it because almost nobody in this industry understands that supplements are sold on these 4 forces in the first place, because people don't buy supplements the same way they buy other products. Just remember, the brands that won did not win because they had better products. The supplement graveyard is full of great products. They won because they understood, whether they could name it or not, that people do not buy supplements the way they buy other products. They buy on desire, hope, trust, and belief. And the winners led with one of those forces and aligned the rest behind it, while everyone else was scattering their message across 4 directions and wondering why the conversion rate would not move. You have the same forces available to you, and now you have the diagnostic to find the force that is holding you back. Go run it. Find your weakest force. That's where your next jump is hiding. And if you go run this diagnostic, and you realize that your positioning and your grasp of these forces is the real bottleneck in your business, and you would rather have a team that does this for a living build it with you than figure it all out alone. That is exactly what we do at Creative Thirst. We specialize only in supplement marketing. We take on a small number of brands at a time, and we are selective about who we bring on. If that sounds like where your brand is right now, you can apply to work with us at creativethirst.com. Thank you for listening to this whole series. Now, go put it to work.